The True Ambition podcast with John Zink is brought to you by IT Avalon. IT Avalon, IT staffing and professional services done right. Visit our sponsor at itavalon.com. Now, welcome to True Ambition.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the True Ambition podcast. My name is John Zink, and I'm honored today to be joined by Kai Vanderloo. And where are you coming? Where are you zooming in from today?
I'm in San Francisco, California.
Nice. Is it overcast? It usually is.
The sun is starting to come out. So,
nice.
As usual this time of day.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you being here today with us. Now, Kai is today the CTO of a company called UserTesting, which we'll talk in depth about later on. Like you said, lives in San Francisco, born in Stockholm, Sweden.
Yep.
Now, you are married. What's your wife's name?
Michalia.
Michalia.
You got it.
And a 7-year-old son.
Yep.
And what's his name?
Aristoteles Thor.
Awesome. That's a great name. That's a powerful name.
Yeah.
So I've got a 2.5-year-old son at home named Johnny. I went right with the same name.
Growing up with a short name, I wanted him to have a long name. Kai is a very inconvenient name. It's like somebody says hi or whatever, you think you hear your name. It's nobody confuses Aristoteles with anything.
So some of the people that Kai has worked with have called him a visionary leader and a true innovator. So like I said, we really appreciate you being here today. And please give our listeners a quick background on yourself.
So, yeah, I born and raised in Sweden. Studied physics, always been very interested in natural sciences. I actually did work as a physicist for a while before I just ended up in enterprise software, more or less by coincidence. Spent many years at SAP as a developer and doing different things across the whole product organization, across the whole company. Really enjoyed it. Came out here to California in 96. It's going to be a year or two. It's been going to be 25 years in November. And been doing different things in enterprise software out here since then, always on the product side of the house. Worked for 2 large companies, SAP and Oracle, a couple of smaller ones, mainly high growth companies with a couple of hundred people. Something I really enjoy. I've been with UserTesting for 2 years now. Truly enjoying it. Absolutely great company. Lots of good people. I think we have a product that I can see every day how it helps our customers do good things. So it's really exciting. It's something I've enjoyed with every company I've been with, is to see how our products help our customers be better.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, in every bit of life is, if you're helping somebody do something and you're doing a good job at it, you're going to be successful, and watching technology, just form into something that is going to transform people's lives in a better way. I mean, that's super exciting stuff.
I agree. And I didn't come into this job or this career from a computer science background and like fascination with the software itself. I've rather been fascinated by what you can do with the software, what the software does for a company, and usually it helps the company somehow serve its customers better. So that's been big motivator for me. It's I'm always excited to spend actual time with customers and understand what they do and how we can help them.
So what do you kind of said before that you've been with huge companies, SAP, Oracle, and then with smaller companies. Where do you enjoy more, the huge companies or the smaller companies, or in between, or kind of Give me an idea. You've been at kind of both sides of it.
I'd say now the scale up phase, like once the shaky startup phase is over and you have a business, you have found a product market fit, and then scaling that, growing it, kind of serving existing customers better, serving more customers, serving more people at existing customers, scaling that up, scaling the organization, making sure that we build a company that actually can work without reliance on individuals, least of all myself. I never want me to be crucial for anything, but rather like trying to build organizations that are almost organic and like very resilient and can function on their own. That's the phase I think I enjoy the most. And it's like smack where we are now with user testing. And that's something I really enjoy.
So let's go back, way back. Well, maybe not way back, but let's go back a little bit. And what was it like growing up in Sweden? I've never been there before. I've just seen beautiful pictures, and I think of snow. I think of hot chocolate. Give us a little bit of insight into what it was like growing up there.
I really enjoyed it. I had a great childhood, great parents, grew up just outside of Stockholm. Easy access both to the city. Stockholm is a beautiful city. It's like built on a number of islands right on where a big lake meets the Baltic Sea. So there's water everywhere. City has been the capital of Stockholm forever, never been destroyed, never been we don't have earthquakes, never been a big fire, never been any war there. So it's it's just beautiful. And same time, easy access to nature. Swedes are very much connected to nature. We spend a lot of time outdoors. It doesn't matter that the weather isn't that pleasant for about 11 months a year. Still, we spend time outdoors enjoying nature. I had a great childhood in that, like this, having like 1 foot in the city and what I think is a nice city, and like 1 foot in nature and spending a lot of time outside. We had a little cabin out on an island. I learned to sail when I was, 5, 6 years old. And it's been like sailing has been a natural way of getting around. And in winter, we would sometimes cross-country ski to school and stuff like that. And like the whole outdoors lifestyle was even a big part of school. The school would take us in winter cross-country skiing or ice skating. And it was a lot of this spending time outside. And so I enjoyed it. And Sweden was kind of an easy place to grow up in a way. I think it was extremely homogeneous back then. It was easy. You met somebody. It was easy to get to know people because we all had very similar backgrounds and similar interests. And I would truly enjoyed it.
So what did your parents do? I mean, what is the main industry there? And then what did your parents do? Kind of 2 questions in one.
Sweden's industry structure is dominated by like a number of big companies, big exporting companies. You're all familiar with Volvo and Ericsson, maybe those kind of big manufacturing technology companies founded over 100 years ago by some clever engineers. So that kind of dominates the industry structure, especially back then. But my dad was an entrepreneur. He's a printer. So he had his own print shop. I spent a lot of time there. The print shop was closer to my school than our home was. So I would always go with him to work in the morning, work with him for a few hours, and then go to school. From school, I would come back to his print shop, spend some time there, and then go home with him. So I kind of grew up in a print shop, and very interesting. And the transformations that industry has gone through is just amazing, from letterpress to offset, and then the whole digitization that came. It's been dramatic changes. It's like,
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and not too dissimilar from what we've seen in the software industry, where I'm old enough to do remember how the 3-tier client server architecture came in and kind of made the mainframe obsolete pretty quickly, and then how SaaS came in and made on-premise obsolete pretty quickly, and the same kind of waves of change that I got to see firsthand in the printing industry when my dad was trying to navigate those changes.
Well, that's what the entrepreneur has to do, is kind of gauge what's happening in the marketplace, and then make the move or don't make the move and go down with the ship.
Yeah, place the bet at the right time, and hopefully place the right bet.
Well, I was like we talked about prior. I'm in the IT staffing business, and I started in Minneapolis back in the late '90s. So it was right before Y2K. So there was a ton of mainframe AS400. My big thing was AS400 back then, and before Y2K, they were saying that airplanes are going to fall out of the sky and all kinds of different things are going to happen. Thank God it didn't. But seeing the evolution of how technology has changed, and like you were talking about in the beginning of the podcast, I'm not a technical person. I employ many, many technical people, and it's awesome for me at a 35,000 foot level. I can look down and see what they're doing and understand what the technology does, but have no idea what they're doing. But it's being that cog in the middle to put people in the right place to help our clients. So there's so many different places we can all fit into this, and it's just so amazing to watch it all happen.
Yeah, no, I don't do any hands-on development, and so I'm kind of a little bit losing touch with what's going on. But I'm still interested in the technology, and I still try to understand when people explain, and sometimes I feel it's necessary for me to understand, even at a relatively detailed level, to be able to help people do their job and to help them. I don't need to solve the technical problems for them, but maybe I can help them find others whom they need to work with or whatever it is. So I think a bit of an understanding of what's going on technically is quite helpful.
So what's kind of the last question about Sweden? Growing up there and then being in the USA, what's the biggest differences between the cultures in Sweden and then the United States?
It's a great question. I'll try to make an answer up quickly. The 25 years I've spent in the US, I've spent in San Francisco, which kind of is our 49 square miles surrounded by reality. It's a bubble of its own. But I think one thing my mother pointed out, she used to come, my parents both came and visited a lot here, and my mother was always a very happy person and walking around smiling. And she said, here, people smile back at you. In Sweden, when you smile at somebody, they kind of look away. And I think that captures the difference between the cultures pretty well. I think that at least here out on the West Coast, people are very open, very friendly, go into any encounter with a very positive attitude. Part of it may be just the way Americans talk about, hey, how are you? And love what you're wearing, whether they mean it or not. It's a very friendly attitude and a very inclusive way. And I think in Sweden, we're not really like that. Not like the first time you meet somebody, you're very cautious. And as my mom noticed, if she smiles at somebody in Sweden, they look away. They wonder, what does this person want? And here, many people just smile back at you. I think that kind of captures pretty well the difference between the cultures. It's like the openness to others that you don't know yet.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've grown up that way. I've always been, I've never met a stranger. Some people say, it's just like go into it and, talk to everybody, get in an elevator. My wife goes crazy sometimes because she's like, could you just shut up every once in a while?
And this made it kind of hard to move here from Sweden. It's a big difference. And in Sweden, we're not used to talking about ourselves. At least not when I grew up. It was like something you didn't really do. It was kind of frowned upon if people talked about themselves. And God forbid they say something positive about themselves. That's a very, very bad thing to do. And here, people are just so good at presenting and so good at expressing themselves. Like I went through all levels of school and got a master's degree without ever giving a proper presentation. I still remember when I had to present my master thesis, and I was extremely nervous. I had never learned to present, I'd never spoken in front of an audience. And now I see like my 7-year-old son, like every day, every Friday in school, they have show and tell and share moments, and they can bring in anything from home and talk about it and explain to their classmates what it is. And it's like so built into the educational system here. And I think it's great. It's a super valuable skill. And it's been the first few years here, like coming here, being shy, not being used to talking about yourself or about anything is tricky.
Big culture shock, I'm sure.
Yes.
So what kind of student were you? I know just personally, I was not the best. So I always like to ask everybody who's on the True Ambition podcast, where did you come from and what kind of a student were you?
I've always enjoyed learning. I always got a kick out of learning, which makes it relatively easy to learn then. Like I enjoyed it already in like middle school, I guess, is when I start remembering these things. Like I really enjoyed math. I enjoyed physics. I enjoyed the solving problems. I also enjoyed languages. I remember I took just 1 year of French and really enjoyed the structure of a new language. And so almost any subject, I liked it. So that made it easy to learn. So I think I've always...
How many languages do you speak?
I only speak 3 languages: Swedish, German, and English. And then
I only speak one. So you got me by 2.
So, but everybody else speaks English, so it makes it easy for you,
right? Because it's all about me.
Exactly. So we've all learned English, so we can talk to you.
So, when you were a kid, you know, we know where you're at now. When you were a kid, what did you dream of being when you grew up? You talked about your father's printing company. What were your dreams and aspirations when you were younger?
The 2 that I remember, I don't remember in what order though, but I was really into trains. So of course I wanted to be, I guess you call him an engineer here.
Engineer, yeah, me too.
Trains. So that's one. And I was really into like animals, and I loved watching these like BBC animal things on TV with my parents. So I wanted to be an animal researcher. I don't think I had any idea what that was, but I wanted to do something with animals, preferably like big, exciting animals that you see on TV. And of course, none of them happened.
Well, I wanted to be a fireman, an engineer, and I wanted to grab the back of a dump truck and dump garbage. High aspirations. So yeah. You talked about it before. In college, you studied engineering, and I also saw economics, right?
Yes. It was something when I was 18, 19 back then. In Sweden, we still had the draft. So it was mandatory military service. So I spent a year in the Swedish Navy with pretty much nothing to do. So I started studying business and economics just for the fun of it during my military service, and then continued it because I really enjoyed it, especially the economics part. It's really interesting, I thought.
Well, you said before you kind of fell into the industry you're in right now. How did you get into software?
I was working at a in the nuclear power part of ABB and actually doing a little bit of nuclear physics work for nuclear power plants when I was pulled into a business process re-engineering project at the company. We had many of those, like we were trying to re-engineer how we did business. I was pulled into one of those together with the former CIO and the former CFO of the company. So it was two great gentlemen with a very broad knowledge of the company and deep thought about how to change things. And then myself, I was like 25 and had no clue what I was doing. But those two gentlemen quickly realized that if we're going to make people work in new ways, we have to give them new systems that support them. And somehow throughout this project, we stumbled upon this German company that claimed to have an integrated system that you could run a whole company on. And there was SAP. And we became the first SAP R3 implementation in Sweden. There were some of the SAP's mainframe software had been implemented, but none of the new client server products. So we did the first implementation in Sweden. And towards the end of that, I really enjoyed working with SAP, with the company, with the software. Towards the end of that, they asked me if I wanted to join them. And I said, sure, I can do that. What's your core business? And they said, it's software development. I said, then I want to do software development. And they said, okay, then you have to move to Germany because we only do development in Germany. That's how I ended up doing software development in Germany for SAP.
Sometimes you just got to jump.
Yep. And then it took 2 years or less than 2 years. And I think, I don't know if they got tired of having me there, but one day they asked if we were to open a development location in the US, a place called Foster City outside of San Francisco, would you consider going there and start up a new team? I said, yes. And they said, oh, no, you don't need to decide now. I said, yes. So 2 weeks later, I had my bags packed and came out here. I think the whole like west coast of the US and California. And I'd never been here, but it just, for many of us, at least my generation growing up in Europe, it's like this mythical place. It's like fantastic, beaches, sunshine. So they don't teach us about the fog in San Francisco and stuff.
I was the same way. So I grew up in a really small town in rural Northwest Illinois, almost as far away as Stockholm, Sweden, or Germany, figuratively. I met my now wife when I was living in Minneapolis. So Northwest Illinois wasn't cold enough, so I went to Minneapolis. And when I met her, I came out to visit her in California. Same thing. I was thinking beaches, bikinis, it's just, and then I get to San Francisco. I'm like, I need a jacket.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I used to have my sailboat down by Pier 39. And it's fun to see all these tourist shops, in the rest of the world, they sell T-shirts. Here they sell fleeces. And you see all these whole families that have bought the new fleece. Like they came here. They didn't know about our weather.
That was the first weekend that I came out here. A good friend of hers, her husband is a sailor. And he's actually a crew on a very large wooden sailboat. And we got to go out that first weekend I was here. And they're like, okay, dress in layers. It's going to be cold. We get out there. It's one of those days where it's like 75 degrees and sunny. So we're all just down to T-shirts and nothing. Like it's never like this. You got really lucky. Yeah,
no, it's interesting that in winter it tends to be quite warm out on the water here. It's beautiful, but then you go in July and August and it's like hauling and freezing.
So do you still sail often?
Yes, I still sail, not as often as I'd like to, but I've got a small boat here down in the marina and try to get out as much as I can and take the family and take some friends of our son and just being out there with the kids. It's become more of a social thing than than a sport, but it's still, I just love it being out on the bay. It's so relaxing and so nice to be able to focus on the natural aspects of sailing and just.
So going back again, what was your first job ever outside of your dad's print shop? 'Cause I know that was the first job for Dad.
That was the first job for a very long time. I think maybe my first job. Oh, I did some internships. That was part of my high school program. We had to do some summer internships, and my dad got me the first one, which was to work for the company that sold the printing machines that he liked. Heidelberger Druckmaschine, the German printing machine manufacturer. And there, so one summer I was working there and hanging out with the service technicians who went out to the print shops and serviced the machines. So that was my first kind of internship. And then I think the first job ever was I was working at the hotel, at the reception at night, as a night clerk in a hotel reception. It was kind of my college days.
Okay. And from that first job, do you remember a lesson you learned from that first job?
It was an interesting thing. Because I was working at night and I was the only one. We only had one person on at night, and there was like the majority of my time was there. But I remember how much I enjoyed it when the day shift started and others started coming in, and you were suddenly part of a team. And maybe it was just 3 people behind the reception desk then, but sometimes it got like very busy, and if I'd been working night, I had to kind of stay on in the morning. And the difference between like working on your own and being part of a small team, and how much more enjoyable it is to work in a team, I think that was one thing I really took away from that. The importance to me of having other people around and being able to share not just the work, but also just helping each other out and sharing comments about things. And it gets very lonely when you spend like 10-hour night shift on your own. And just a stark contrast to them, like being with a few others and during the daytime. I think that's maybe something I took away from there.
Yeah, and I enjoy the camaraderie too. I've got to have that interaction with human beings. You know, the whole COVID thing has been a real switch, right? So it used to be head to San Francisco, head to San Jose, head to the peninsula, wherever it was, to go to lunches with clients or do whatever. And, you know, the last year plus, it's been what you and I are doing right now, you know, and people sitting behind their desk at home with a fake Zoom background, which makes their hair disappear every once in a while, you know, but just having that interaction. Moving forward, do you think it's going to go back to everybody being back in an office, or do you think it's going to be a hybrid situation? Or kind of give me your 2 cents about that.
I've been thinking a lot about that, and we're trying to kind of get ready for that future. And from most conversations I've had with people, I believe that we're going to get together for a purpose. I think for many of us, the days of just going to an office to be at the office are over. I think what people are hungry for, the ones I talk to, is primarily to get together with the people they work with and go solve problems together and work intensely with those people, not just be in a generic office with all kinds of people. That desire, I think, is not there. It's just like people want to get together with the people they work with to get work done. And we're a very distributed company. We have already, before the pandemic, we had a lot of people working from home. Maybe somewhere between a third and half of our developers were working from home. Now everybody is, but we also have multiple locations in San Francisco and Atlanta and Edinburgh and Scotland. So even like our offices are relatively distributed. So we have a lot of teams that may have team members that live far away from each other and that work out of different offices or out of their homes. And these people want to get together for like a week with a team somewhere. And that I think we're going to see much more of, that offices become places where teams get together for a purpose for a given amount of time and then go back again. So that's my analysis of what I believe we're going to see. And then I know that there are like other teams in the company and other people I've talked to who have more this desire of being in an office, but for them it's often that their whole team is in that office. So I think it's a little bit the same motivation, like you want to be with your team.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch everything unfold over the next year and just watch how people take advantage of it. Because for me, my team is in touch with all these different technologists all over the place that do all kinds of different things, infrastructure, software, project management, everything. And you've got a lot of them saying, well, I don't have to go to an office anymore. I'm going to choose to be around my family more. I'm not going to commute. So there's going to be a lot of choices that companies are going to have to make in the future if they want to get the best people. So it's going to be really interesting to watch the whole thing unfold.
I completely agree. And I think it's just looking at myself, and maybe I shouldn't be extrapolating from myself, but I never liked to work from home. I spent 25 years going into the office every day. And when this whole thing started and suddenly I had to work from home, it took me like a week or two to get used to it. But now I really enjoy it. Like more time with the family, eating 2 or 3 meals together. It certainly has its positives. And I work outside a lot. I notice I get much less tired if I'm outdoors. If I have one-on-one conversations, I go for a walk and I talk on the phone with people. And it has many, many positives. And then, as I said, I was one who always went to the office just out of habit, and I thought it was the right thing to do. And I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, there's been for as many bad things have happened over the course of the last year plus, there's been a lot of blessings that have come along with it and a lot of lessons that people have learned. So when you were talking before about, I've had many clients who said, no, I've got to have people in the office. I really can't have anybody remote. And I was like, well, if you would just bend a little bit, you can get someone who can work a hybrid type thing, and you can save a little money on them too. And just when COVID hit, boom, it just drew the line in the sand, and it was like, okay, but what it did is it proved a point for those people who were afraid or not willing to try it. And now they all go, oh, it can actually work. And a lot of the times people are more productive than they were traveling to and from an office every day.
Yeah, there was something we noticed. I don't keep like engineering productivity metrics that we look at all the time, but when the lockdown happened, we did look at some numbers, and it looked like our productivity within a week or so after the lockdown started, it was a little bumpy in the beginning, but then productivity went up by almost 20%.
Wow.
And again, these are not exact metrics of anything, but it seemed like people became more productive. And then I hope it's not because they kind of burnt themselves out and worked more hours, but I don't think so. I think it was just more focused time, less distractions, more, maybe a little bit more control over your own time. And then again, we were very remote friendly and remote centric in a way before this all started. So I think for us as an organization, it was not that difficult. We were in a good spot to take advantage of it.
I got a couple of fun questions that I throw in here, and here's one of them. So, if you knew that you were going to inherit a fortune, how would your plans for the future change?
I don't know if they would. I'm so happy with life in general now, like with family, work, like everything is pretty good. I cannot think of much I would change.
I love that answer because mine's the same. I don't know that I would change anything. I mean, I love every day right now.
Yeah, I don't go walk around longing for something I don't have, neither
Me neither.
material nor emotional nor anything. So it's I honestly I can't give you any other answer. Like I don't know.
That's a great answer. So you said before you were at SAP for a long time. What was your experience there? And what were some of your different jobs that you did? Because that was a big part of your history.
I joined as a developer, and it was an amazing time at the company. They had just launched the client server product, and I joined to work on that. And the company, the founders, they realized they had come on to something. The company was about 20 years old and it's founded in 1972, and it had grown to, I don't know, it was maybe a couple of hundred people then, and was still a very German and relatively small. Well, it felt big at the time, but like by today's standards, a relatively small company. But they knew they were onto something with this client server product, and it just started taking off in the market in unexpected ways.
Let me ask you a question real quick, because 1972 was the year I was born. What did SAP do in 1972?
The founders, 5 founders who all worked for IBM, who had this idea of building a fully integrated real-time system where any transaction that comes in anywhere in the business, whether it's a sales order or a purchase order or anything else, goes into one central database, and where everything gets updated. The logistics about it, if it's a sales order, like what goods has somebody ordered, but also the financials of it. And that was like the idea they had to create this integrated real-time system, and built 2 generations of that thing on mainframes for 20 years until they kind of struck gold with the client server product. And they knew they were onto something, and they knew it was like time to go global, big time, and they invested a lot in the product development. All founders were developers themselves, and it was a very like product development led company. And it was cool because it was the flattest hierarchy I've ever seen. It was like you were a developer, you had a manager, and then above them was the executive board and the executive team, which was largely the founders plus, I think back then, 2 hired board members. So that was it. And as a developer, you did everything. We didn't have product managers. We didn't have much QA. You did everything. You were out there talking to customers, understanding their business, understanding what they're doing. You went back, you wrote software to support that. You built that into the system. You worked with your colleagues to make this whole thing work in an integrated fashion. And then as the release came out, you went back to your customers you'd been talking to, and you helped them use it. So you got direct feedback on what you had been building. And of course, as developers back then, we were all what we would call full stack developers. No, we built everything from the UI to the data model and everything in between. So it was like you owned your part of the system. It was a big system. You owned a small part of it, but it was fun. It extremely educational. So I learned a lot about. I started writing project management software, and then first time I came here to the US, I built a team that developed software for the aerospace and defense industry. So I learned about how aircraft are manufactured and maintained, and it was just absolutely fascinating thing. And then I built software for the high-tech industry, and I learned about how chips are manufactured and semiconductors and all of the different players in those supply chains and how supply chains work. It's just fascinating stuff. It was fun, and seeing it through the kind of the eyes of the enterprise systems that support all these business processes was fascinating. It was something I always enjoyed working for SAP with its broad customer base. Was you got to see companies in all industries, and like I spend Monday with a retailer in Mexico and Wednesday with a shoe manufacturer in the US, and it's like different business models, everybody using our software. It was fascinating. I really enjoyed it, and worked with some great people there as well. I really enjoyed it. I spent 12 years uninterrupted there, and never got bored. I always had the opportunity to do new things, and trying to do some leading edge things. I think the company was very willing to try new things and take risks, both in terms of which kind of customers we went after and technologies we used. There was never nothing kind of held us back much. There was a willingness to try new things. So, and I had a great time. Not a day in those 12 years did I get bored.
Well, it sounds like an amazing training ground, wearing every hat, for moving into leadership and then executive leadership later on, because you have to know every piece of what's going on at that high level to be able to lead a team. So you have to go in, because I work with many different clients where it's like you got a software engineer who's going to do exactly this one little piece, and that's all they're expecting that person to do. But I have other clients where a software engineer is going to go in and they have to know, just like what you talked about, you're going to do your own QA, you're going to do your own UAT, you're going to do all these different things, and you got to wear all those different hats, and some people fit into those positions, some people don't. But like you said, it's a great training ground for later on when you're going to go out and lead people.
Yes, I think so. And I also think that in software engineering or in any other of the functions we have in a modern product organization, knowing the basics of why we develop software, why would anybody buy this, why would anybody want to use this, is super important, because there's so many decisions you have to make every day, whether you're a designer or a product manager, engineer, quality engineer, whatever it is. You make decisions every day, and if you cannot reflect back on, like, why are we building this? What are customers going to use this for? If you don't have that frame of reference, it's very difficult to make good decisions.
Right? You got to have that, what they call the elevator pitch. What do you do? And if you don't know what you do, you ain't selling nothing. And you shouldn't.
You have to, and you have to know why. And that was something I really enjoyed at SAP, spending time with customers and learning, why are they buying our software? Why are they spending all this money implementing it? Why are they willing to change their business processes to fit our software? And why is this so valuable? And super interesting. I remember working with a Japanese company in their European subsidiaries that all were standardizing all of Europe onto I think it was one single instance of SAP. And for them, the big advantage was that now they would do order processing the same way in every country, and everything would work the same way. And there's no point in doing things differently in Spain from in the Netherlands when it comes to like procurement or order processing or accounting. It's like standardizing it, getting good system support for it, having everything in real time, having visibility into everything. It's a great thing. And it's quite a kick to see this and to hear customers describe this.
So we fast forward to present day. You are the CTO, like we talked about before, of UserTesting. Tell our listeners about UserTesting and exactly what you guys do.
We do something that I think is fairly unique. We help our customers connect to their customers or their non-customers or people they would like to hear from that they may not know. So we do this over the internet, remotely, in a extremely scalable way. So the most standard use case for our software is that somebody wants to get feedback on something. So say you have a new design for a website or a mobile app, and you want to know what people think about this. So you can put together what we call a test. You can ask a few questions. You can ask people to do something on your website or in your mobile app or in the real world for that matter, and speak out loud while they do so. And then we record all of this. We record what people do on the screen. We record their face. We record the audio. We record like the clicks and everything. And then we take this and out of this, we analyze this and we kind of create when I say we analyze, there's a bunch of machine learning algorithms that understand what comes back, and then we kind of present it to the user. And this goes very fast. So say that you have a website for a new design for a website you want to get feedback on. Most of our tests are completed within 2 hours. So like within 2 hours, your designer can hear what real people have to say. And they can look at their faces, they can look at their expressions, they can hear their voice. It becomes very human, this getting the feedback. It's great to have web analytics where you measure every click on your website, and it's great to run surveys and kind of get feedback from people like that. And then when you kind of can see and hear people speak, real humans, that I think creates a very deep connection to people, it's a very high quality feedback, high density feedback. So that's what we do essentially. Like we enable people to connect out to humans there, and which produces what we think of as human insights. Like when you watch this, you understand what people think about your product or the experience that you provide. It doesn't have to be products. It can be marketing materials or anything like that. And this has been really interesting. Now in the pandemic, there have been so many companies have been forced to provide new experiences. Just think about like things that are standard now that hardly existed a year ago, like all this online ordering and going for curbside pickup. Retailers, if they wanted to survive, they had to figure curbside pickup out within a week. And so they had to create entirely new experiences they had never thought about. And we helped many of these companies test these experiences and get feedback quickly. Like within the first week of the pickup experience, we had customers who ran tests every day. They were asking people about the pickup experience, and they tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it until it got better. We've seen some amazing success stories where retailers that were very like in-store focused suddenly had to get their web experience right, and they had to get these pickup or delivery experiences right. So a lot of new experiences have been created. Like you can't go to a restaurant anymore and look at the menu. You have to like scan a QR code somewhere and stare at your phone, and it's again new experiences that have been created, and some are good, some are less good. But it's the companies that provide these good new experiences have had a big advantage in all this chaos of the past year.
So when you say like recording the person's face, so does the technology actually look at the person's expression while they're answering or reading, or how does that technology work, and does it record the data from that, or how does that all work?
We don't do that yet. So we have a number of data sources. One is the video of the face, one is the video of the screen, one is the audio that you speak, and one is like the clicks and what's actually happening on a website or taps on a mobile app.
Okay.
And and then we know the what you're trying to do, and we know some things about the person taking the test, and then we combine all of this and we analyze it. And we don't do facial expressions yet. We've been trying various facial expression technologies, various like emotion recognition things for about a year, and I think that there is something interesting there. We do a lot of analysis of what people say, so we pick out their sentiment, we pick out what they actually talk about, and whether they're frustrated or whether they're making a suggestion or whether they're expressing confusion. So we pick these things out, and we tag this, so that if you want to go in and you want to see just where are people confused in all of this, we can show you just a series of clips where users are confused, so you can get a quick view on where things could be improved. Or you can see we call it a highlight reel of just a series of clips of where people really like what they see, so you can learn from that. So it's different ways of kind of accessing this feedback, but it's like super powerful. We see this a lot with our customers, and when they get some of these good clips and they go out and they share this within the company, it is so persuasive when you actually see a real human, whether they're positive or negative. I mean, I'm sure it's great to have a high NPS score, but it's like not that. If you have a few clips of people saying like, I really like this new design, and they explain why, and they seem passionate about it, that is very, very powerful.
Well, they have all of the, when companies come out with products, they put together user groups, right? Or the test groups, right? So they can actually see somebody interact with the product or whatever it is, the service, whatever it is. I mean, this has got to be a very powerful thing to look, because everybody who creates something thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread as the creator, right? But you don't know until you put it in somebody's hand and get that back. So that's got to be pretty powerful feedback.
It is. And if you look especially at these like agile development processes that we've had in software for a decade now, but they are becoming mainstream in like any experience development, whatever it is people are building, not just software. And you have to make decisions all the time throughout this. People make decisions every day, and if you can base these decisions on a good understanding of your users, if you can build these decisions on this, like the real human feedback, you make better decisions along the way. And it's really powerful. And when we see this implemented and used well by our customers, it creates a very human-centric culture on these teams, and they start building empathy for their users. Because I think there's a big like empathy gap in many cases. If you look, especially digital experiences are created by a relatively homogeneous group of people. It's like most software developers are in a certain age range, and they live in certain areas, and they have like a certain income level. It's hard for them to empathize with people who are entirely different, maybe living in different parts of the world, or maybe very old or very young, and whatever it is, in different financial situations. But if you hear from these people and you build on your team this culture of empathy, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, and you might be really close to something. You might have to just tweak something here or there to get those people or that demographic to jump on board and start using the product or the service or whatever it is.
Yeah. And it's not only about negative things either. It may be that a certain group really likes something.
Yeah,
and you can build more of that.
Yeah, if you've got 100 people going, this is the best thing ever, then you know you're on the right track.
Yeah, and they tell you why it's the best thing ever. They tell you why it delights them. So you learn from that, and you can apply that to other parts of the experience you're providing.
What a cool company. That's great.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's a super useful product that we often hear from customers. They tell us about some unexpected ways they've been using the product and how that worked well. Like they've been using it to ask their employees about something, or something we hadn't really thought, use cases we hadn't thought about, or they use it. We now support mobile phones very well with the camera on the mobile phone, so you can test real world experiences, and customers do really interesting things with that, where like they're testing packaging of physical goods, and they ask people to just prop up their camera and like open the package and tell me what you think while you're opening it, and they test packaging materials and all kinds of things. It's fascinating.
Well, they have channels on YouTube where people do nothing but open up packages.
I've got to admit, I've never told anybody this, but I've never watched an unboxing video.
Me neither. I just heard about it and I laughed.
Yeah. And these things have millions of views. It's fascinating.
Watching somebody open up something.
But it shows you the power of the video. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody would read a blog about somebody opening a box with an iPhone in it,
right,
or whatever it is they're unboxing. But when you see it on video and you hear them speak, it becomes more interesting, and it's more this human connection. Even if it is a recorded video, it's much more human than any other media that we have today.
So I told you before, I'm in the IT staffing business. So as an executive, I'm sure that you've dealt with many IT staffing vendors. What do you look for in an IT staffing vendor?
The times when I've seen IT staffing work well is when both sides agree to be part of one team. That this is like when the buying side, if you want, they have to not view these people as some aliens or somebody who goes and does the job we don't want to do. They have to kind of open up the team, the systems and everything. And the flip side from the staffing side, people have to be willing to kind of become part of a team and not stay away. That's the one thing I've always been looking for. And it hasn't always been like that. I've had some cases where it's been working well, and that's always the common thing. And then I've seen cases where it's not been working well. And usually it is the buying organization that doesn't approach the situation in the right way.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too. If we can go in as a partner, there's a lot more positive things that come out of it that way than the opposite way. My last question about this is I talked to a ton of managers, and I'm also curious about how you build out a team. I'm sure it depends on which situation you're in, whether you're with a startup or with a large company, but how do you go about building a team, and what do you look for in your team members that kind of holds them apart from anybody else that you would want them in your organization?
The way I like to lead a team is to develop a vision for where we want to go. Be very clear and preferably involve a lot of people in developing this vision. Be very clear about where we want to go, and then give people the support they need to figure out how to get there. So I don't need to tell people, I cannot tell people what to go do every day. So that's kind of the general leadership. And a lot of that, when we then build out teams for this, it's the cultural fit and like the buy-in. People who join these teams have to be willing to take responsibility for setting the direction. I cannot have people who expect to be told what to do every week or every day. It doesn't work like that. They have to be willing to figure those things out, and to kind of giving people a lot of freedom within a framework, and that's the cultural fit is like really are people willing to work like that? Does that work? I think that is more important than hard technical skills anytime. That it is always more important.
Some more personal questions. Well, some business, some personal. Tell me about one of the biggest challenges that you've overcame in your life.
My biggest professional challenge was the first time I started managing managers. That was so different to me from managing a team. I went from managing a team, and it was a development team. I think we had maybe one or two product managers, but I was still a pretty good developer myself. I could go into any piece of the code and help people out, and was very much like, I don't know what you call this today, like a player coach or something. And then going from there to managing managers. And suddenly it was a much larger organization. We used technologies I wasn't familiar with. And I had a very difficult time in like understanding how to manage managers. And I gravitated towards spending time with the people I enjoyed spending time with, and spent less time with the people I didn't enjoy spending much time with, which of course led to their parts of the organization didn't deliver. I didn't see that. So I fell pretty flat on my face, kind of the first time managing managers. And it took a while to recover from that and to understand what happened. It was like the first time in my professional life I hadn't exceeded expectations. I hadn't delivered more faster than planned. And
it's a big ego bruise.
Yes. So that was interesting. It took me a while to get over that and to like understand what happened and understand how to really build organizations to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So what was the lesson, and how did you learn the lesson to get you to a point where you became a great manager of other managers?
I think it's to realize that it's all about people, and it's all about making sure people feel comfortable sharing problems early on, making sure somebody I worked with a few companies ago created this slogan for our team, just saying no surprises. We don't want any surprises. If anything is going faster than expected or slower than expected, or you have technical difficulty somewhere, or some design we have cooked up doesn't really work, just tell us now. And then we can adjust, and it doesn't become a big surprise towards the end. And I think in this no surprises, you have to build the whole culture for that. You have to create the willingness for people to speak up. You have to give them the channels to speak up through. You have to make sure that the person who speaks up is rewarded for it and not punished for it, even if it's a difficult message they deliver. And that, I think, is what building an organization is about, is to make people feel safe, make people be informed about what we're trying to achieve, so they also know what good and bad looks like, and they can judge that themselves. I think that's the big takeaway from this, is you have to make sure that there's a lot of communication, that people trust each other, that they do speak up, that they understand what the other functions are doing. We've touched upon this a few times today, that if you're a software developer, you have to know, like, what does a product manager do? What does a designer do? What do the quality engineers do? What do the ops people do? How does your code behave? And once it's in production, and same for all of these functions, they have to know what the others do. And I think when you create that, you create a culture that can build great things pretty quickly and quite predictably. No surprises.
I love it. Professionally, who has been your biggest inspiration?
At SAP, I had the good fortune to work relatively closely with Hasso Plattner, one of the founders. And I've always been amazed by his ability to both think big about what's going on in the enterprise software industry and what's going on in industries outside of our industry that we need to react to, that we need to support. And at the same time, being great with details, being great with technical details, being great with organizational details, knowing people individually while running a big company in a fast changing industry. And this whole span of different different magnitudes of decision making and being able to hold all of that together, I think is fascinating and very inspiring.
And on a personal level, who is your biggest inspiration?
I just like my son a lot. He is always has a positive attitude, wakes up every day with a smile, always has something positive to look forward to in his day. That's a big inspiration. I think it's this positive attitude, the positive outlook is so helpful. If you start your day looking forward to it, it's probably going to be a pretty good day.
Right? Yeah, I'm gonna walk in the house here in about an hour, and little Johnny's gonna be going crazy, yelling "Dada." So day's all good. Doesn't matter what happened prior to that. It's all good. So I hear you there. So what was the most notable event in your life that led you to where you are today?
I don't know. I think it's been a series of events that have maybe more or less just happened to me, that I got into the university program I wanted, like the day it started. I think they called me. I was my dad's print shop again, and they called there. I managed to hear the phone ring. I went pick it up, and they said, like, "Hey, do you want to come study engineering physics here in Uppsala?" I said, "Yeah, that would be really cool. That's what I really want to do. When does it start?" I said, "It starts today, but you can come tomorrow." Cool. So it was that, and then I got kind of a dream job after that, and as I told you earlier, I just happened to join SAP. That was a big thing, I think, getting out of the nuclear power industry, which isn't the world's most dynamic place, and into software. And then 2 years later, they sent me off to the west coast of the United States, and I've been 25 years in San Francisco now. So it's been like a series of these little things, many of them, all of them pretty much unplanned. It wasn't stuff I had really planned for.
So it might be that you saying yes to multiple things might be the key to your success.
I think so. And again, saying yes and looking at it as an opportunity. And this is going to be good.
Yeah.
And guess what? It was good.
Yeah. So sometimes that opportunity is right in front of people, and you just have to be willing. You know, the door's open. There's no lock. There's no nothing. You just have to be willing to walk through.
And not question yourself, and not focus on everything that could go wrong. Focus on the opportunity.
I don't know about you. It sounds like maybe your parents were the same way, but my mom told me from the very beginning I could do anything. You know, it was just my mom is one of the most positive people in the world. You know, and growing up in a very small town in the Midwest, there was a radius. My town's 1,500 people, so the world is very big when you grow up in a town of 1,500 people, right? And to be sitting here today talking to you, you know, it's a world away from where I grew up at. But my mom told me I could do anything I wanted to. And it's a very important thing. It's the same thing I'm passing on to my son, is that you get to do whatever you want to. As long as you work hard, you're honest, you're humble. You know, there's a lot of things that go with it. But, you know, you can do whatever you want to. Sky's the limit.
Yeah. No, and I think it's fascinating to think ahead one generation, just like seeing all the opportunities these kids have in front of them, like just the world as it is today. It's with just a difference from when I grew up, and their ability to connect to others and to see the world, and feels like we're in a new age of space exploration now. I think it's just fascinating what's going on in space at the moment, and with the Mars progress and the rovers and the little helicopter that just flew up there the other day. And
I saw that.
it's just that whole, and just project 50 years forward where that's all going to be. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, just look where we were 50 years ago. It seems like, I'll be 49 here in a couple weeks. 1971. I mean, that seems like 150 years ago now because of where technology's at today.
Yeah.
So a couple of fun questions before we end here. What do you miss about your childhood?
Oh, I only remember positive things. So I miss the long summer days, being like out with friends on a beautiful Swedish summer evening when the sun, like in Stockholm, the sun hardly sets. It's like light all day, like those childhood things. And the winters, of course, I only remember the beautiful sunny, snowy days when there was lots of snow and the sun was shining and we were digging forts into these huge piles of snow, and we're having snowball fights, and everything was just, and then you go in and mommy has a hot chocolate for you. So lots of those little things. I often think about like sailing my first little sailboat off of the dock of our cabin, and just being out alone on the boat, and kayaking. I grew up kayaking with my dad, and again, I just remember, of course, the beautiful sunny days kayaking around the archipelago from island to island, camping, always looking to find an island of our own, camping there. So it's a lot of these things I remember, and I'm not going to say I necessarily miss them, but I have a lot of happy memories about it.
How often do you go back?
Used to be about once a year. Haven't been in the past year for obvious reasons, but
right.
Hopefully it will pick up again.
Good. So I know my answer to this question, it would be no, but would you likely survive alone in the wilderness?
Not impossible. Depends a little on how wild the wilderness is and what's around me, but I have spent a bit of time in the backcountry skiing in winter, and done a lot of backcountry skiing all over the world, and done a fair amount of hiking in different places. And I don't think I could survive for long in a very wild wilderness, but I think for a while, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'd have a day or two. I would take Ed with me. Ed's like MacGyver. He can just like create anything out of anything. So, well, I've got one more question for you. It's the same question I ask to everybody when we end out the True Ambition podcast. So you've been a lot of places. You've done a lot of things. Being where you've been and knowing what you know now, what is your true ambition in life, both personally and professionally, moving forward?
I think it's actually the same, both personally and professionally. And it's helping others, particularly others near me, grow and reach their potential. I think I've been very fortunate, and in my life, I felt like, just as you said, I can do whatever I want. I always felt like there are possibilities. And I want to see it personally. I love to see my son take opportunities and see possibilities and grow and do what he enjoys. And same thing professionally. I think my interests have gone from, maybe initially it was a bit around the technology, and then it became around how we support customers' business, and maybe 10, 15 years ago, it turned more to the people, and like, how do you lead an organization and help the people in that organization become what they can become, and see the opportunities and take the opportunities. So I think it's the same thing personally and professionally. It's helping the ones around me reach their potential and grab the opportunities that are out there.
I love it. Well, I tell you what, it's been a pleasure talking to you. This has been a fun podcast, and I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, and listening to the True Ambition podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
The True Ambition podcast is brought to you by IT Avalon. For more information and links to other episodes, please visit www.trueambition.org. Now, go find your true ambition.